Hello family, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Angela and this channel is all about beauty, fashion, and life. And I've been getting a lot of comments about you all loving my sit down while I'm chit-chatting and talking about life type videos. And this particular video subject has been on my list for quite some time. I just didn't know how to approach it or when to kind of do this video, but I just thought there's no time like the present. So, you know, some things have come up recently that just kind of reminded me that I had this subject to do a video about. So I decided I'd go ahead and do that today. Now, if you'd like to hear the advice that I have for mothers, then stay tuned. Now, let's get started. Okay, before I get started, it is Black History Month, and the t-shirt that I'm wearing today is from a company called Elements for Design, and it says February 1, 1960. Now, if you don't know, now you will, that I graduated from the best HBCU in the country, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, North Carolina A&T. Now, this t-shirt represents 4 A&T students who on February 1st, 1960, sat at the Woolworths counter. Back then, Woolworths was a place that you could buy clothing and stuff, and they had a lunch counter where you can go get some lunch. I think you get breakfast there too. But back then, 1960, which was not that long ago, just a little over 60 years, the lunch counters were segregated. So if you were white, you were allowed to eat inside the buildings. If you were black, you would have to go out back and get your plate kind of out of a window. You were not allowed to sit together at the lunch counters. And these students were pretty much sick and tired of that. No, it was not fair. There was segregation. It was just not fair. So they staged a sit-in. The 4 of those students sat there at the counter and refused to leave. The police was called, and of course it escalated, and it became the sit-in movement in Greensboro, North Carolina. And it started there, and it just went out through the country, and that eventually spearheaded the desegregation of lunch counters where all people could eat regardless of color inside the restaurants wherever they wanted to, which was fantastic. So yes, that happened at my alma mater, and that's why this says February 1, 1960. Okay, so I'm gonna put my glasses on because y'all know I can't see. And if you wanna know where these came from, these are from Peepers. I did a collaboration with them a few months ago. I really do love the frames. They're chic, aren't they? They're cute. And so I have my notes here because I didn't want to miss anything. So, and I started this because I was thinking some of this stuff I wish I had known when I was a young mother. Some of it I think every mother needs to know. I do have one particular section that is for mothers who are no longer with their children's father. Some advice for them, because this is something I had to personally experience, not something that I did, but something I personally experienced, so I can give you firsthand account of how that situation feels from a child's standpoint. So I really want to talk about that heavily. And also I want to say, before I get started, as mothers, none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. There's never been a perfect mother. Well, you know, there was Mary. She had the perfect child for sure. Don't know if she was a perfect mother, but she had the perfect child for sure. But as humans, we make mistakes, and as mothers, we will make mistakes as well. So just don't beat yourself up as mothers. If you've done, for the most part, the best you know how, and you've done what you could to make sure your children were safe and happy and healthy, then don't beat yourself up for, and later on in life, sometimes kids will come back and you didn't do this, and I wish you had done that, and, you know, but you did the best you knew how. And just don't beat yourself up for not being a perfect mother. You're not a perfect human, so you're not going to be a perfect mother, just like your children are not perfect children. So let's start with that, okay? So I'm going to start with some positives, and I wrote them in order. So the first thing I recommend, or the first advice I have for young mothers, is to read to your children. I don't think mothers realize how important it is to read to your children. You know, we all get busy and we're doing things, and you just kind of, some things take priority, but reading to your children is very important. First of all, it cultivates a love of reading. And a love of sitting down and grabbing a book or grabbing an iPad, which is what they'll probably be doing, or a Kindle, and just reading. A lot of people say if you want to hide information, put it in the book. You know, you can't get all the information that you need to grow and be a knowledgeable human being from the internet and just from word of mouth. There's a lot of knowledge in books, and children are not used to reading like they were when I was young. We all had books to read. We had reading lists. We used to go to the library. Remember the book fair? You would get, oh my God, when the book fair was coming, you had a list of things they would have at the book fair, and your parents would know several weeks ahead of time, so they have money ready for you to go to the book fair, and they let each of the class go to the library to get the books, and you buy books and little trinkets as well. But it was really, really nice. And like I did that with my daughter, and she loves to read. And her children like to read too, but not quite as much as she does. But you gain a lot of knowledge. It helps them to be more articulate because they're hearing you say the words. They're looking at the book and they see the words. So it helps with their memory and being able to not just create an extensive vocabulary in their mind, but being able to use those words in everyday verbiage when they're speaking to people. So reading is very, very important when it comes to your children and cultivating skills that they need for the future. Along the lines of reading to your children, also we need to limit the amount of time your children are spending on electronics. So I took my oldest grandson, he's 11, to the physician about a month ago. And one of the questions the doctor asked him was, how much time are you spending on your electronics? How much time are you spending on your phone and your iPad? And he was like, I don't know. You know, he's a child, he don't know. And I asked him, why are you asking that? And he said that children who are spending more than an hour on electronics, playing games and stuff, start to have issues with socializing with other children and just issues in general. He said they get so focused on those electronics, and it teaches them instant gratification. And that instant gratification can lead to frustration because they now expect that sort of behavior to carry on outside of that electronic. So in real life, they're expecting everything to come to them immediately when they want it, as fast as they want it. And when they don't get that, it leads to frustration, which could eventually lead to depression. So we don't want that for our children. He also said that studies have shown that when children are on their computers or iPads for over an hour or for extensive periods of time, the brain itself mimics the brain of a child with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And it can truly trigger negative neurons in the brain. So it's not healthy for them at all. And so again, just try to cultivate a love of reading with your children and limit the amount of time they're spending on electronics. And it's going to be very difficult if they've been doing it already. I know they do it for school, but if they've been doing it when they come home, it's going to be very difficult for them at first. But just set a timer. Okay, you only have an hour on whatever you're doing, and they'll get used to it. They won't like it, but they will get accustomed to it. And at first they'll be saying, I'm bored. What am I going to do? But eventually they'll figure it out. They'll figure out how to soothe themselves and how to entertain themselves. And that's something they really need to do. That's something they really need to learn how to do as people anyway. You can't be entertained 24/7 like the children are right now. That it's just really not healthy for them. So they need to be able to sit down and be still with themselves and entertain themselves and soothe themselves, and not let that be done by an iPad or a phone or by television. So the second tip I got from our financial advisor. My husband and I met with a financial advisor, and he was telling us about savings and savings for children and how much money you'll need for retirement. And if you start at age, say 15, saving $100 a month, by age so-and-so, you'll have this amount of money. And the older you get, the more money you need to save each month to reach the same goal as you would when you retire. So he recommended, you know, of course our children are older now, but he made that recommendation, and I was thinking about the grandchildren and talking to my daughter. You need to start saving for them now. Even if it's $50 a month or $50 a paycheck, that money adds up and builds compound interest. And don't just put it in a regular savings account. You can put it in interest accruing savings account, or eventually once you get enough money, you can put it into a mutual fund in the stock market, and you can research that later. You don't need to put that in a regular savings account because the interest that's accrued on that money is overshadowed by inflation. So you can start off with $100 and you may get, they say 3% interest, but if inflation is at 6%, then you're actually losing money every year on that money. So take that money, put it in an interest-bearing savings account, and then once you get enough money, put it in a mutual put it in a mutual fund, invest it in the stock market, because you'll gain so much more money with that compound interest, so much more than you would have leaving it in a regular savings account. So start saving for your children now, and also get life insurance on your children as early as possible. So the guy that was telling us about this also is an insurance agent. He was telling us about himself and several of his cousins. So his grandfather sold insurance. And so, of course, the entire family knew about insurance. So they got insurance on all the children that were born. As soon as they were born, they got, I think it was whole life insurance on there. You have to ask your insurance agent. I think it was whole life on the children. And he said, as of right now, he is the only one out of his cousins that is insurable. Like if he need to get insurance starting today, he has no health issues, so he'd be able to get that insurance. His other cousins who have had cancer, who have had multiple comorbidity issues would not be insurable. Their insurance would cost so much money they wouldn't be able to afford it. But because their parents got them life insurance when they were born, and that life insurance followed them through adulthood, and they just had to pay their regular rates on that every month, that they still have life insurance in the case of their death, and then they could borrow from that life insurance. So if they had to get life insurance right now, they wouldn't be able to get it. But because they got it when they were early, now when they pass on, because of whatever comorbidities they have, their family will be left with enough money to bury them and just enough money to pay the house and have money to live off. So he said the earlier you can get life insurance on your children, the better. I know a lot of people don't think about that because they're babies and they're healthy and happy. We think they're going to live forever. But unfortunately, everyone doesn't. Some people meet their demise at a very young age, and that is very unfortunate. But what would be even more unfortunate is having to ask money to help bury a child or a young adult, and that can all be avoided by getting life insurance on your children as early as possible. My third piece of advice for young mothers, and I know we're busy. When I had my baby, I was 19, and when she was a little girl, I was so busy. I was in nursing school full-time and working part-time. I got barely any sleep whatsoever. So I truly understand, if you're a single parent or even if you're working parents nowadays, how much stuff you're doing, how much time you don't have to teaching your children some of the things that I feel as an older woman now, as a grandmother, that children should be taught. And what I really, really encourage you to is to try your best to make it a priority and teach your children how to care for themselves. Not just how to wash their face and how to put their clothes on, but how to make their bed, how to use the vacuum cleaner, how to sweep the floor. When Shadia was small, I did buy her little brooms and little dustpans. She would see me sweeping. And I really, really went into overdrive when my oldest grandson was, when he was born, because I was still at home. I was older. I was working out, and I had a lot more time to spend with him than I had time to spend with his mother. And I just made it my goal to make sure this little boy knows as much as he can about taking care of himself as early as he can. And I started with him. His mother followed suit as well, teaching him when he was 4 years old. I bought him a stool and where he could put it up to the sink, and we taught him how to wash dishes. Now, were the dishes really clean? No, they weren't really clean, but it was the teaching and him knowing that he's gonna get better, and that he knows that if I eat off of a plate, somebody has to wash it, and I need to learn how to take care of myself. At 4 years old, I also taught him how to wash his own clothes. I sure did at 4. I remember I took that stool upstairs, and it took me, I sat down, and this is something, parents are so busy. Grandparents are just amazing. This is why my daughter really missed me when I left home to go to Saudi Arabia. I sat down on the floor where he got his little dirty clothes basket, and I showed him how to divide his clothes. These are your white clothes, and these are your color clothes. I didn't get any more complicated than that. white pal, your color pal. You don't wash them together, Gabriel. And then I told him, let's go take your clothes and put them in the washing machine. Put them in the washing machine. I poured the laundry detergent in a little cup and I gave it to him and let him pour it in himself and taught him which buttons to mash to start, and how to start the washer, and then when it finished, how to take it out and put it in the dryer and how to start the dryer. So at 4 years old, he knew how to separate his whites from his colors, and he knew how to wash clothes. Then I'm a good grandma. I bought him a little iron and a little travel iron. I know it was hot, but he didn't want to get that heat on him, so I just brought him a little travel iron and bought him one of those little ironing boards for the dorms, or little smaller ones, and showed him how you iron your clothes, because the travel irons really don't get real hot. But this is how you iron your clothes, Gabriel. So I would sit it to the side. I would get the ironing board when I was ironing my clothes and let him iron his little t-shirt. So he was learning how to iron clothes as well. Also taught him how to mow the grass. By then he was, I think, about 5. How to mow the grass. Of course, he couldn't push the lawnmower, and I didn't have a self-propelled lawnmower. But when I would go out and mow the grass, the lawnmower has the top, and then most of them have a little handle in the middle, just kind of to stabilize the handle. So I would go outside, and I would put him in front of me, and he'd hold that little handle, and I'd push the top handle. And so I was teaching him how to mow the grass. And that's something I think we all could teach our daughters as well. I know a lot of women will say, I am not mowing the grass. And I too don't have to mow the grass anymore. Myself, I enjoy mowing the grass, but I don't have to mow the grass. And I'm not saying that you have to mow the grass, but I think it's something we should teach our children how to do, our sons and our daughters. I don't believe in a division of labor, teaching boys this and teaching girls that. I believe in teaching them both how to do whatever I'm gonna teach. I'm gonna teach it to both of them. So if I had a granddaughter, I would have taught her how to mow the grass as well. So I taught him how to mow the grass. I started teaching him how to be, this is how a young man is supposed to behave. Open the door for your mother when she gets in the car. You open the door for your mother when she's going in the house. This is how a young man is behaved. And just little things like that. And I started that early at 4 years old, when he was really interested, when he really wanted to be around me and he wanted to do everything I was doing. And so I think it's very important that we do that. My husband and I went to Target, and somebody spilled some powdered detergent, and I saw this girl that was working there. She looked like she might have been 17, sweeping the floor, trying to sweep the powdered detergent up. And I swear, she looked like she did not know what to do with that broom. And I was waiting on him, so I had to stand there for a few minutes. And she was she was completely lost with that broom, and I just couldn't wrap my mind around why she didn't know how to sweep the powder up in that dustpan within a couple of minutes. Just and like somebody was telling her, sweep over there because you missed a spot. Sweep over here. And at first I was thinking, oh, why are you telling her? You should just go get the broom and do it. But she just was lost, and I thought, how is she gonna ever take care of herself? She's old enough where in a couple of years or so she's gonna leave home for college, and she don't even know how to sweep a floor. Anyway, I went on a tangent. Teach your children how to take care of themselves as much as possible, as early as possible. And yes, you should teach your sons how to cook. Yes, ma'am. I mean that as well. The next advice for mothers, this is from me, from my experience, and this is also, it triggered a memory when I saw recently a video of Gail and Oprah. I think it was a couple of years old though, but I saw them talking, and Oprah was asking Gail, how did she get along with her ex-husband when they broke up, and how was the dynamic between her and her ex-husband and with the children, because she caught her husband cheating on her in her house. She had gone out of town and come home early with her kids. He was in the house with somebody she knew. I heard Gail tell Oprah, I had to love my children more than I hated him. And I thought that was really, really powerful. And that takes a lot of maturity and introspection and being the bigger person. I can tell you from experience, it is very unhealthy, very selfish, and very insensitive to speak negatively of your ex or your children's father in front of your children. It breeds animosity, it breeds anger, it breeds insecurity in your children, and it's a very, very painful thing to have to endure. Children can't articulate that I see my father in me, that I am a part of him, I feel a part of him. All they know is I feel bad. It makes me feel bad when mom talks about dad or when mama talks about daddy. It is a horrible, horrible thing to be a child and have to endure that. It's very painful. And ultimately, as mothers, we want what's best for our children. And it's not fair to them. They didn't choose that man as their father. You did. We did. We chose that man, and we chose to father children with him. So anything that transpires between us as mothers and that man is between us as mothers and that man. Now, if it was an abusive situation where you fear for your life, or it was a very, very unsafe situation, you can be honest with your children if they start asking questions, but it's not something that needs to be discussed in front of the children. If they ask questions about why can't I, or why shouldn't I be around him, or why can't I go see my daddy, you can speak to them in a loving manner and at a level that they can comprehend. You know, we can't go see daddy, it's not safe. They may not understand what that means or understand the gravity of what that statement is, but you can speak to them in that way. But never, ever, never, ever, ever speak negatively of your ex in front of your children. It's just not fair. It's only going to cause them a lot of pain, and it's very selfish and of you or of mothers when they do that, because they're not thinking about how the child feels or how this is going to impact that child, and it will impact them hands down negatively. It will have a huge negative effect on them. And if it's not an abusive situation, every child will benefit from having a relationship with their father. Period. They will benefit, whether it's a boy or whether it's a girl. He and she will benefit from having a relationship with their father. And you should never ever speak negatively about them in front of your children, nor should you allow anyone else to speak negatively about your child's father in front of them. I had a situation where my daughter's father and I were no longer together, and one of my family members started saying something about him. I said, "Stopped it, right then. Don't do that. Don't do that. We're not gonna do that. That is not her fault. That's her father. It's my fault that's her father." And let me just say, Shadia has a great father, but she was just angry with him because we weren't together. But that was between he and I. It had nothing to do with her, and that's none of your business. But at the bottom line is, you will not speak. You will not talk about him in front of her. You're not going to do that. And I never allowed that. I didn't do it, and I didn't do it because I had to endure it, and it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. Now, were all the things that were said a lie? No, they weren't. They weren't all a lie, but still I didn't need to hear it as his child. That was between you and him. That's the conversation you'd have had with him or had with someone else out of earshot of me. But it is very, very painful to a child to hear someone speaking about their father in front of them. So just do not do it under any circumstances. Don't have that conversation with anyone or about him in front of them. But again, if it's an abusive situation and there's information that child needs to know, for instance, if they're a little bit older and you need to tell them if he's stalking, and you need to tell them if you see your father, you need to call me because he's not safe, then that conversation needs to be had. But outside of something like that, that's not a conversation. You just should not do it. Just don't do it. Okay, so the last piece of advice is be very, and I mean very, very careful and selective with who you let babysit your children. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Color Purple, when Oprah says a girl child ain't safe in a house full of men's. They are not. A girl child is not safe in the house of one man if he's a sex offender. And unfortunately for most of us, we don't know who those sex offenders are. I started looking at statistics, and 1 in 10 children are molested before the age of 18. 1 in 10. We don't think about that because we don't hear about it. And a lot of times it's not spoken about, especially if it's family members. You have to be diligent about who keeps your children. Child molesters don't look like the boogeyman. 90% of sexual offenders are people that your child knew. 30% of those sexual offenders are relatives. You just cannot leave your children with anybody just because you're tired or you want to go out or you need a break. It's not worth their innocence. It is not worth it. It is just not worth it. If you ever sat down and talked to someone that was molested, the pain and anguish that they have to carry for the rest of their lives was not worth that moment of you having a day away, having a little peace of mind where you just have some peace where you're not hearing mommy, 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 mommy. You just have to tell yourself, they didn't ask to be here. And I know I've been a mother, I've been exhausted. I've been very, very exhausted. I was hypersensitive about who babysat my daughter. And yes, there are female molesters as well, but it's not nearly as common as male child molesters. The only men that I would leave my daughter with when she was young was her father. That's her father. Of course, I trusted him. And my brother that I grew up with. I have 2 brothers. One brother that I grew up with. Those are the only 2 men that I would leave her with. Those are only 2 men that I felt like I knew from my heart that would never violate my child. Even when she was away from me, so if she was with her father and when she would come back, and I'd give her a bath, I'm checking and making sure everything is okay. I just was hyper vigilant about that because you just cannot get that innocence back, and it's just not worth it. And the people who you assume or you never even think about would touch your children will touch your children. And so you just cannot risk it. You just cannot. You just don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. If you think about, you have a classroom of 30 children, 3 of those little children are going to be molested by someone, and chances are it's going to be by someone they know, and then by someone that's related to them. You know, most families we all know, or it's whispered or it's hushed about most of the time. Uncle so-and-so touched cousin so-and-so. But Uncle so-and-so didn't go to jail. Nobody made a big deal out of it. I don't know why they don't, but it's just not worth it. Do not, and I'm speaking for daughters, and you shouldn't leave your sons with anyone either, but I'm saying it for daughters. Just do not leave that innocent child in the hands of men, or where there are men going to be around the children on a consistent basis without you there. If you have to, sometimes you just have to. You have to work. You have to feed them. You have to provide for them. If you can at all best just leave them with the female, then do that. Again, I know there are female child molesters, but the chances of that happening with her is far less than it would be if you left your child with a male babysitter. I don't believe in having young boys as babysitters anyway. I just don't trust it. I just would never. It's just not worth the risk at all. So that is my advice for you as a mother if you have children. And I know sometimes, a lot of times, especially nowadays, if you're a single parent, you have to work and you may have to leave your child in the care of family. But if you can not leave them with males, then that is just my recommendation. It is what it is. The facts do not lie, and it is not worth your child's innocence for you to be upset with me for saying it, but the facts don't lie. They are what they are, and it is a very, very devastating thing to have to go through. Well, that's it, family. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave me a comment in the description box. I look forward to reading all of those. I'm sure they're going to be very, very interesting. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time with me. I really, really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And I want you to have the most blessed day. Bye-bye.